Hello folks, welcome to another video. And yes, I'm about 2 videos behind, so videos that you see get uploaded are about a week, shot like a week ago. So the top is covered in those, may not be recent, but a week is still pretty recent. Yes, so I will be smoking Cuban honey truffle, and it is a flavored cigar. And once lit, it actually smells okay, or smells pretty okay, pretty good. But it has a very, just from sniffing the cigar, it has a very earthy, kind of like a damp, to me, kind of like a damp cellar. Or a old damp house that needs to be dehumidified. That's what it smells like. So I guess truffle, earthy dirt smell. And the only Bugatti that I can actually own, yes, this is a yeah, and this is a tabletop lighter. It is a triple torch. Whoop. Yes, I am out here. It is still hot, really hot. Even at 9 in the evening, it's still like 100 degrees. But it is windy. And yes, if you don't have I mean, it's so windy out here that the tips of the flame is curving. Yes, and these V-cut. Not a bad draw, could be a little bit smoother, but And of course, Cuban honeys, they have over 10, 15 flavors. I haven't tried them all. I do like the vanilla. The Country Gentleman, I really like that one. I had like a pack of 10. This one I actually bought a box of 20. And it is sitting in its own masonry jar. It's up to you. If you want to mix, it is not recommended, but if you want to mix your flavored cigar, now if you got like 1 or 2 stick, that's probably okay, but oh man. Just had dinner, so I haven't been chewing too much. Yeah, but it's just 1 or 2 sticks, probably okay. But if you got 10, 20 sticks, mixing it in with your humidor, you're probably going to end up flavoring, flavoring your other cigars. Especially if you have them with these had the wrappers, but especially if you have them unwrapped. Yeah, because that's basically how they flavor cigars. They put them in a room, and they put the whatever flavor that they're going to flavor the cigar with in the center of the room, and let it let the aroma out and let it infuse. Yeah, so whatever flavor scent they're going to infuse the cigar with, they'll stick it in the middle of the room, for I don't know, a month. That's basically what you're doing. You're sticking a scent into your humidor, and you're letting it, infuse into the other cigars. But if the cigars are all wrapped, like you didn't take the cellophane wrap off, then don't want a mosquito bit me in the butt. Then I think with the cellophane wrapper, you might be okay with again, maybe 4 or 5 sticks. But again, masonry jars are not expensive, so well, and get yourself some. So in the news, well, it hasn't been much. I chewed a lot during dinner. There really hasn't been much. Of course, Nancy Pelosi's husband's mugshot has been released. because at first, they weren't gonna, the police weren't gonna do anything until, of course, people got on their ass and they're like, well, okay, well, and if this is his first DUI, it's really nothing. Not that I've had DUI, but I've known others who've had it. And of course, especially being in California, you hear stories all the time of a deadly car crash, and then you look up the drunk who caused the car crash, and it's like, this is his fifth DUI. And of course, back when he was 16, so we're looking at what, I think I don't know if he's around the same age. I think he's around the same age as Nancy Pelosi in his 80s. So we're going back, decades and decades to when he was 16. He was driving drunk and I guess got into a crash, killed his buddy or his passenger in his car. Luckily, you can say luckily no one got hurt in that car accident. Or maybe we don't know. No, again, they tell you that if you aren't seriously hurt, in a car wreck, of course you're not going to feel the pain because of adrenaline. And again, I've known people who've been in a pretty serious accident where they're like, hey, I'm not, it's like the next day or two is like, oh shit, I'm hurting, take me to the hospital. So it might have been the same case for this guy who was hit by Paul Pelosi, with adrenaline running, and all of that. The next day or two is when he probably felt mainly, yes, the seat belt. A lot of people will get they call it seatbelt burn. You'll feel it the next day. So even if nothing got broken, you weren't thrown through your windshield, the seatbelt burn, you'll feel that the next day, or if not a few hours down the road when the adrenaline wears down. My mom, when she was, of course, in her younger, around my age, I guess you could say, or even younger than me, she had a T-bone incident where she was coming out of a shopping center, and onto the. No, it wasn't her. It was the lady. So the lady drove out in front of her from a shopping center. And of course, you couldn't stop in time because the person, if a person pulls out in front of you, you can slam your brake. Yes, you'll slow down some, but the impact's still going to be pretty high. Same thing. She wasn't hurt till the next day, where she felt the seatbelt burn. And yes, there was a purple welt, like across her. And yes, the lefties love using it's like, well, the government implemented the seatbelt rule for your own safety. So the government implementing the mask rule, well, you can't compare seatbelts and masks. I've said this in other videos. One is to keep you, from flying through your windshield. And yeah, and at one time, people, I think it wasn't until 1963 that they didn't, or it might have been even later, later, like maybe in the late 60s, where car manufacturers weren't required to have seatbelts in their car. Yeah, and back in the old days, seatbelts were only across the lap. It wasn't until the 70s or maybe 80s where it was in the 70s, because I had a 70-something car where it was across the chest and across the lap. And yes, if you are diabetic or have a diabetic relative, because of the supply chain shortage, you might have a hard time finding. Now I have see here. I happen to buy, I guess I buy it from my mom. So, and I happen to buy a whole bunch of needles. And yes, you poke your finger. You know, the needles usually put in like a sort of a little needle gun, I guess. It has a spring on and it shoots the needle onto a tip. I tried it. You know, yes, I get checked every year. You know, on your physical. You know, if they don't do it, ask them to do your A1C. And every year, as long as you're under 6, if your A1C comes under 6, then you're okay. You know, for a healthy young adult, you know, you should be around 3. Your A1C should be around 3. For an older person like me, yeah, you know, if you can hold it around 3, but for older folks like me, you're gonna be, you know, if you're not diabetic, you're gonna be hovering around the 4, you know, the 4 mark. Yes, because most of us, I'm not gonna say all of us, but most of us put on a little bit of weight when we get older. Yeah, so if you're older and you do your yearly physical, they don't do your A1C count with your blood work, because they do blood work. I think most of them do A1C anyways. Since I buy the supplies at times, and I guess my, you know, old mom, she's an old lady. So I was like, oh, let me see, man. It's like, oh shit, it stings. It's like a real quick sting, and then a few seconds later that the pain goes away. They do have different needle size, since we're talking about diabetic supplies. They got thinner needles and they got thicker needles. You know, if you know, if you work with your hand a lot, you may have callus on your hands. You know, if you're a guitar player, you know, you may have callus on the tip of your fingers, and you may need a thicker needle or a longer needle. They make thicker needle, thinner needles, and longer needles. And I'm like, yeah, that's you know, for what you call that? I forgot, it was a movie. Yeah, vampire movies. You know, I'm surprised those guys don't walk around with one of these syringe, one of these little diabetic needle punchers. And just go around testing people. So, all right, let me see here. Let me taste your blood. Oh, okay, you're clean. Yeah, supposedly vampires can tell who's diseased, who's not diseased before they bite them. The kind of like the disease-sniffing dogs. Yeah, so test strips. Of course, things that you're going to need to rebuy for those of you who are probably going to have to do, you know, start doing testing. You know, you'll need, and you can buy the kit on eBay, on Amazon, you know, or you just go to, you know, Wally World. I think Walgreens and CVS carries the kits too, but they carry their own brand. And yes, the test strips only works on that brand that the test strips are made for. So if you you know, buy from Walmart, which is the Rely On brand, then you might get lucky, and the test strips from another maker may work with your meter, but but for the most part, all of the makers will say, hey man, our test strips are meant for use on our meters only. So what you should do is buy a kit. The kit will normally come with the meter, the needle puncher, a whole bunch of needles, you know, buy extras, and a whole bunch of test strips, buy extras. So after that, the only thing you would need for your testing purposes is you know, needles. Buy more needles, because you know you gotta throw them away. You can buy the little plastic containers. Well, they're pretty big. Plastic containers, put the needles in, because you don't want to just, you know, chunk them in your trash, because you know it is technically biohazard, has your blood on it. And testing strips, only those two things you got to buy. That's for testing purposes, and of course the insulin, that's the expensive part. Like I say, under Trump, mom was paying something like, 30, 50 bucks, 30 to 50 bucks for her insulin, and now it's up to 300. Yeah, talk, because at first it kept going up, so after Joe Pedro got into office, and he undid Trump's Trump's deals, and you can see it climbing. It went 200, now it's up to like 300. And that's with Medicaid. People who are paying cash without Medicaid, and I got some relatives and buddies. You're looking at about for an extra 100 to 200. So even with Medicaid, so if you're paying out of pocket for 1 month, it's about 400 bucks, 400 bucks for insulin out of pocket. So if you're not using any insurance or Medicaid, the retiree insurance. Yeah, it's expensive. So, and I know for some folks it's genetic, and no matter how much you exercise, no matter how much you change your diet, you're stuck with it for life. And yes, and I've had relatives who did stick with exercising, stuck with diet. Just don't overeat. And you don't have to stick with just vegetable, because the doctor recommends no meats, vegetables only. And yes, and some people have gotten off of diabetes or off of the diabetic medication from doing keto. And I've known a few folks who's like, hey man, I got my A1C checked after I got on the keto diet. I got my A1C checked 3 months later, and I'm back down to normal range. It's like, cool, man. Hey, I love meat. I could do. Actually, in my younger years, that keto was pretty much my diet. My mom would call me. She would call me the. I guess the undead monster, because all you eat is meat. And every time I come over you, I see you just eating meat. Yeah, and I'm not a huge bread eater. I will eat some rice, but bread's not my thing. Fatty steaks is my thing. So that's why I love ribeyes, briskets. I tend to stay away from the New York strips, because those are the lean steak. And yes, if you get a fatty steak, you can always trim the fat off. Unfortunately, I don't have a butcher near me so I gotta buy from like the big box stores or the big chain grocery stores. But everyone says, hey, if you got a butcher nearby, buy your meat from the butcher, whether it be beef, chicken, or whatever. And yes, I guess I'll close it on this. So supposedly, I guess there's a huge fire on the outskirts of London. It's basically a suburb community of London that caught fire. And I bet you once they do the investigation, it's going to turn out to be somebody set the fire. And the firefighters at first tried containing it, but it looks like they gave up. And they're just, okay, we're just going to let it burn itself out. And if your house, unfortunately, if your house gets in the way, too bad, your house is going to burn down. And I guess for the climate change activists, the more house, the more field that catches fire in that London fire, or that London suburb. They call it the, I think it's Glastonbury or something. It's the name of the city. So for them, it looks good. The more field that catches fire, the more houses that catch fire is for the climate change activists. Hey, that looks good for them. But hey, look, man, it's so hot this summer. But someone, someone put them to task. They went back, and it was a meme that they put out that it showed, the I guess the weather map from 20 years ago. You know, then the weather map of this summer, and they're like, yeah, the temperature's the same. So what's the difference? Yeah, at least it's windy tonight. And yes, for all of you Cali folks that's in Texas complaining about the heat, if you want 70, 80 degree heat, you got to go back to California. This is the normal summertime temperature for Texas. We hover around the the high 90s, 98, 99, into the low 100s. And yes, the story about those 2,000 heads of how the hell did I guess the wind blew a ant onto my arm? That it crawled up my leg and somehow made it to my arm. I don't know. Yeah, so the ash fell off. So it's a nice pointy cherry. That means I've been puffing on it pretty steadily. Let me take the band off. Yeah, kind of like a few weeks ago when that 2,000 heads of cattle died in I guess southern Kansas, and they were blaming that it was 100 degrees and the cattle died of heat stroke. And of course us folks here in Texas and even up in Oklahoma, we're all like, if that's the case, then all the cattle would be dying every summer here in Texas and Oklahoma. Yeah, so as long as maybe people are saying, hey, people are saying that those cattle were poisoned, which I wouldn't put it past some insane person or a insane environmentalist group poisoning those cattle, and then the people are like, oh, hey, hush, hush, we don't want word getting out that 2,000 cattle got poisoned. Poisoned by who? That we're never going to find out. Yeah, because that's the case. If 100 degree heat are killing cattle, yeah, the cattle in Texas and Oklahoma, they should be dying every summer. Yes, once it gets into the high 90s, into the hundreds, the cattle ranchers do keep water out for the cattle. They have shades for them, but but usually the cattle don't die from 100 degree heat. Do they love it? No, probably not. So, well, that's it. So, I guess enjoy your climate change along with your smokes. You vape guys are safe. Looks like I guess looks like Juul is not going to have to discontinue their juice. Yeah, and of course I don't think it's. And I don't vape, so I don't know. Juul is like the main maker, so everybody knows about them. And yes, and of course their vape devices are made in China. The infamous batteries blowing up, catching fire in people's pockets. That hasn't. I guess that got remedied. Dog, that's cigarette ash, you dumb dog. Old hound dog. Yeah, that's my 19-year-old hound dog. Well, he's not a hound dog. I call all dogs hound dogs. Oh yes, and I almost forgot. Nancy Pelosi, of course, her husband Paul Pelosi made $5 million on a computer chip trade. Which turns out the U.S. government is supplementing the computer chip makers, who are of course over in Taiwan. I guess Intel and AMD are American companies, but their chips are made back over in Taiwan. And yes, AMD has been kicking Intel's butt the last few years. And of course my graphics card broke during the winter. And of course, your graphics card break, it was slowly breaking, but I said, okay, well, I'm going to keep, just using it until it completely breaks, which it finally did. And of course, back during the winter, prices of graphics cards were like, triple, double, triple, and I kept waiting. Finally found a deal. Went ahead and bought it, and of course, a month or two later, the prices come down to the MSRP price. So I'm like, damn it, man! It's like it's no use now going to buy because I had to, instead of buying the card that I wanted, I had to like go lower down my I guess model that I wanted. So now I could go and buy the model that I want, and then sell the one that I got. And of course, I won't get return, or you know, I'll buy it and then just keep that one till the price goes up again and sell it, get my return. All right, well that's it. Oh yeah, she's going to head to Taiwan in August, and if China invades Taiwan, it ain't going to be anytime soon. And if the tables flip in the midterms, yeah, China definitely going to invade Taiwan. So Taiwan better pray, you know, that MAGA gets into Congress, because the donkeys are back in. Taiwan's going to invade, unfortunately. Alrighty, and there we go. Looks like a cigar. This is actually a pretty good cigar. The Cuban Honeys. You know, if you're not into flavored cigars and you want to try any line of the Cuban Honeys, would be okay, because they're not super. Well, Country Gentleman is kind of a. I think that one's like the really scented one, but the truffle one is not that super scented. I've been sitting there puffing on it and didn't even really notice I was puffing on a flavored cigar. But thanks for watching.